Commander Doyen Park stood in the control room of Earth Central Command, staring at the screen that showed New Haven. The colony world looked peaceful from space. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in gentle patterns. 2 billion people lived down there. His sister lived down there with her husband and 3 children. The warning came too late. Red alerts flashed across every monitor. Velkari ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Not just a few ships. Hundreds of them. A full battle fleet. Doyen's hands moved across the controls, trying to reach someone, anyone on New Haven. The planetary defense grid activated automatically. Defensive satellites powered up their weapons. It would not be enough. Everyone in the room knew it would not be enough. The Velkari fleet moved forward in perfect formation. They did not send any message. They did not give any warning. Their weapons charged and fired as one. Doyen watched the screen as beams of pure energy struck New Haven from orbit. The defensive satellites exploded like small stars. The planetary shields held for maybe 10 seconds before collapsing. Then the real bombardment began. Cities vanished in flashes of light. Oceans boiled. The atmosphere caught fire. Doyen tried to speak, tried to give orders, but no sound came from his throat. Other officers around him shouted into their communication devices, demanding to know what was happening, begging the Velkari to stop. 6 hours. That was how long it took. 6 hours for the Velkari to turn a living world into a ball of molten rock. When they finished, they simply left. They jumped back into faster-than-light travel and disappeared. Doyen fell to his knees. Around him, people were crying, screaming, throwing up. 2 billion people. Gone. Just gone. Ambassador Mireille Song stood before the Galactic Coalition Council 3 days later. She wore black. All the human delegates wore black. The council chamber was enormous, designed to hold representatives from 300 different species. The elder races sat in the highest seats. The Velkari, the Thoan, the Rexith, the ancient civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Mireille's voice shook as she spoke. She demanded justice. She demanded an explanation. New Haven had done nothing wrong. Humanity had followed every law, every treaty, every rule the coalition had given them. The Velkari representative, a tall creature with silver skin and too many eyes, stood to respond. His voice was cold. Humans had expanded into restricted space, he said. Humans had violated ancient territorial boundaries. Humans needed to learn their place, Mireille tried to argue. She brought up maps showing that New Haven was in approved territory. The Velkari showed different maps, different boundaries that humans had never seen before. The documents were clearly fake, but none of the other species said anything. Then came the ultimatum. Humanity would surrender 15 more colonies as payment for their violations. These colonies would be given to the elder races to do with as they pleased. Earth would accept these terms or face consequences. Mireille could not believe what she was hearing. She looked at the other delegates, the younger species, hoping someone would speak up. No one did. They all looked away. Earth's government refused. Chancellor Jiwoo Han sent a message back to the coalition. Humanity would not surrender its colonies. Humanity had done nothing wrong. If the coalition wanted peace, they needed to admit what the Velkari had done was murder. The Thoan Dominion responded within a week. Their fleet appeared above Horizon Point in Arcadia. 2 more human colonies, 3 billion more people. The bombardment was even faster this time. The Thoan wanted to make a point. Ariam Lim was 19 years old. She was on a transport ship heading to Horizon Point when the Thoan attacked. She watched from the observation deck as the ships appeared. She watched as the planet below her died. The transport captain immediately turned the ship around and jumped away, saving the 300 passengers on board. Ariam pressed her hands against the window and screamed. Her parents were down there. Her little brother was down there. When the transport reached Earth, Ariam was the first person off. News cameras were everywhere. Someone pushed a microphone in front of her face and asked her what she saw. She looked directly into the camera and spoke. Her voice was steady. Too steady. She described watching her world burn. She described seeing the clouds turn red, then black, then disappear as the atmosphere was stripped away. She said she watched her family die, and there was nothing she could do. Then she said something that would be remembered forever. She said humans had spent 200 years trying to be good neighbors in the galaxy. Humans had been respectful, peaceful, careful. And for what? So that elder races could murder billions of them without consequences? She looked into the camera and said that maybe it was time humanity stopped being nice. The video spread everywhere. Every human world, every human station. Everyone saw Ariam's face and heard her words. The mood changed. Fear turned into rage. Grief turned into hatred. Chancellor Han called an emergency meeting. Only a few people were allowed in the room. Admiral Kiwan Choi was there. He commanded Earth's defense fleet. Dr. Heejin Bak was there. She led a research project that most people thought was just theoretical physics. Captain Min Ho-yun was there, though he could barely sit still. His entire special operations unit had been stationed on New Haven. He was alive only because he had been off-world for training. Dr. Bak spoke first. She told them about the Prometheus project. For 200 years, a secret group of scientists had been developing weapons. Not normal weapons. Weapons based on technology the elder races had abandoned as too dangerous. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets, entire worlds, entire solar systems. The room went silent. Chancellor Han asked why these weapons existed. Dr. Bak said that humanity had always known this might happen. Humans had studied galactic history. They knew the elder races had committed genocides before. They knew that younger species were sometimes eliminated if they became inconvenient. So humanity had prepared, just in case. Admiral Choi asked if the weapons would work. Dr. Bak said yes. They had been tested in secret. They would work. Chancellor Han looked at each person in the room. He asked them what they thought humanity should do. Surrender or fight? Captain Yun spoke first. His voice was filled with cold rage. They had killed his friends. They had killed his family. If humanity had weapons that could hurt them, then humanity should use those weapons. All of them. Dr. Bak hesitated. She said these weapons were terrible. They violated every rule of war. They could kill billions. Was humanity willing to become what the elder races already were? Admiral Choi stood. His sister had died on New Haven. Her children had died. He looked at Dr. Bak and said something that would echo through history. He said the elder races wanted to teach humanity its place. Maybe it was time to teach them what happens when you push humans too far. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would fight, not to win territory, not to gain power, to destroy anyone who had endorsed their genocide. 2 weeks later, Captain Yun led 12 stealth ships to Kronos Station, a major Velkari military base. The ships used experimental cloaking technology that made them invisible to sensors. They appeared inside the station's defensive perimeter without warning. The Velkari never knew what hit them. Human weapons tore through the station's hull. Explosions rippled through the structure. 37 minutes later, Kronos Station was debris floating in space. 20,000 Velkari were dead. Not one human ship was damaged. Captain Yun broadcast a message on all coalition frequencies. His face appeared on every screen in the galaxy. He spoke calmly, clearly. He said the elder races had murdered 6 billion humans. They had thought humans would surrender. They were wrong. He said this was not a war for territory or resources. This was extermination. Humanity would not stop until every species that supported their genocide was destroyed. The elder races had awakened something they could not understand. They had awakened humanity's rage. The message ended. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in peace for thousands of years suddenly felt something new. Fear. Real fear. The kind of fear that comes from realizing you have made a terrible, terrible mistake. And humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Coalition met in emergency session. The enormous council chamber buzzed with worried voices from 300 species. The destruction of Kronos Station had shocked everyone. The Velkari claimed it was a lucky strike, but intelligence reports told a different story. Humans had technology they had never revealed. Cloaking systems that made ships invisible. Weapons that cut through shields like they were nothing. The elder races realized they had severely underestimated this young species. Overlord Vathek of the Velkari Empire stood before the council. He was tall and imposing, his silver skin gleaming under the chamber lights. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had ruled for centuries. Humanity needed to be contained immediately, he said. But they were still just one species. The coalition would mobilize 10,000 warships. The human resistance would be crushed within a month. The other elder races agreed. The Thoan representative nodded. The Rexith leader gave his support. The younger species stayed silent, as always. They had learned long ago not to question the elder races. What none of them knew was that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario for 200 years. Every human world activated military protocols. Factories that supposedly built civilian ships revealed their true purpose. Soldiers who seemed like peacekeepers showed their real training. Orbital stations that looked like simple defenses transformed into fortress systems. Dr. Hyejin Bak worked around the clock in her laboratory beneath Earth's surface. She had not slept properly in weeks. The Prometheus arsenal was being deployed. Each weapon she had helped create was being loaded onto ships, sent to strategic positions, prepared for use. The first weapon was the quantum displacement drive. It allowed ships to jump short distances instantly during battle. Not faster than light travel, but teleportation. A ship could be in one place, then suddenly appear somewhere else. It made human vessels nearly impossible to hit. The second weapon was the Singularity missile. When it hit a target, it created a tiny black hole. The black hole lasted only seconds before evaporating. But in those seconds, it consumed everything within 500 kilometers. Ships, stations, anything caught in its pull simply ceased to exist. The third weapon was the most frightening. The Stellar Ignition Array, a network of satellites that could be placed around a star. When activated, they would force the star to collapse prematurely. It was a weapon that could destroy entire solar systems. Admiral Kiwan Choi visited Dr. Bak in her laboratory. He found her staring at a screen showing the array satellites being loaded onto transport ships. Her hands were shaking. She told him these weapons were supposed to be deterrents. Humanity had built them hoping they would never need to use them. Choi's voice was cold when he responded. The elder races had murdered humanity's children. Now they would learn why humans had banned these weapons among themselves. Because humans knew what they were capable of. Dr. Bak wanted to argue. She wanted to say there had to be another way. But she thought about New Haven. She thought about Horizon Point and Arcadia. 6 billion dead. She authorized the final deployment orders. The Coalition fleet gathered at a staging area near their territory. 10,000 warships from dozens of species. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The elder races were confident. How could one young species stand against this? The human fleet met them at a region called the Void Expanse. 500 human ships against 10,000 Coalition vessels. The numbers were ridiculous. The Coalition commanders smiled. This would be easy. Admiral Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable. Around him, his officers checked their systems one final time. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Everyone knew some of them would not survive this battle. But they also knew what they were fighting for. The Coalition fleet advanced in traditional formation. Huge capital ships in the center, smaller vessels forming a protective screen around them. They moved slowly, confidently, expecting the human fleet to either run or die. Choi gave the order that would change galactic warfare forever. Show them what human war truly means, he said. No mercy, no quarter, no survivors. Every human ship activated its quantum displacement drive at the same moment. 1 second, the human fleet was at a distance. The next second, 500 warships appeared in the middle of the Coalition formation. The enemy had no time to react. Human weapons fired in perfect coordination. Singularity missiles struck the largest Coalition ships. Black holes blossomed in space, swallowing entire vessels. Displacement torpedoes teleported inside enemy hulls and exploded from within. Kinetic weapons, accelerated to nearly the speed of light, punched through shields as if they were paper. The Coalition fleet tried to respond. They fired back, launched their own missiles, attempted to regroup, but the human ships kept disappearing and reappearing. Every time the enemy targeted a human vessel, it would jump away and another would take its place. The battle lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of continuous brutal combat. When it ended, 73% of the Coalition fleet was destroyed. Burning wreckage floated in space. Escape pods drifted among the debris. Humanity had lost 42 ships. The mathematical impossibility of the victory stunned the galaxy. 10,000 ships reduced to less than 3,000. 500 human ships, most of them intact. The elder races had been decisively beaten in open warfare for the first time in anyone's memory. But humanity was not finished. Captain Yoon, now promoted to general, began a different kind of campaign. Human forces started broadcasting the names of everyone who died on the 3 destroyed colonies. The transmission played continuously on all frequencies. 6 billion names. It took weeks to read them all. The message was clear. Humanity remembered. Every single person. Every life that was taken. And humanity would make sure the galaxy never forgot. At the same time, human intelligence agents released classified information they had gathered over decades. Evidence of elder race atrocities throughout history. Genocides they had committed and covered up. Species they had driven to extinction. Civilizations they had enslaved. For thousands of years, the elder races had presented themselves as wise guardians of galactic peace. Humanity tore away that mask. They showed the galaxy what the elder races really were. Cruel, ruthless, willing to destroy anyone who threatened their power. The younger species in the coalition began to question their loyalty. Whispers of rebellion spread. Some species secretly contacted human representatives asking about terms of peace. Others simply withdrew their forces and declared neutrality. The Thoan Dominion decided to send a message. They would show these upstart humans what real power looked like. They launched a massive strike against the human colony of Sanctuary. This time they used biological weapons. Diseases designed to kill quickly and spread fast. Human forces detected the attack and responded within hours. The Thoan fleet was destroyed before it could escape. But the biological weapons had already been released on Sanctuary's surface. Ariam Lim was on Sanctuary when the plague hit. She had been traveling between colonies, speaking to survivors, recording their stories. She was in a small town when people started getting sick. Within hours, the streets were filled with the dead. Ariam survived. Her natural immunity saved her. But millions of others did not. She walked through empty streets, past houses where entire families had died. She recorded everything with a camera. The galaxy needed to see this. The images spread everywhere. Ariam's face covered in dust and tears walking through streets of the dead. The video became a symbol, a reminder of what the elder races were willing to do. Chancellor Ji Wuhan made an announcement that sent chills through the galaxy. His voice was calm, but his words were absolute. The Thoan had chosen to use weapons of extinction. Humanity would respond in kind. The Thoan homeworld and all their major colonies would be completely sterilized. This was not a threat. This was a promise. In her laboratory, Dr. Bach heard the announcement. She knew what was coming. She knew what would be asked of her. For the first time since the war began, she broke down crying. Humanity was about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. They were about to become the monsters they had always feared. But there was no going back now. The fire had been lit, and it would consume everything. 3 human fleets moved through space toward Thoan territory. Admiral Kiwan Choi commanded the operation from the Indomitable. Each fleet had a target, the Thoan homeworld and its 2 most heavily populated colonies. This was not an invasion. This was annihilation. The stellar ignition array had been tested in secret for decades. Human scientists had perfected it in uninhabited star systems where no one would notice. Now the galaxy would see what humanity had built while everyone thought they were peaceful explorers. The satellites were moved into position around the Thoan homestar. It took days to place them correctly. The Thoan military watched but did not understand what they were seeing. They thought the satellites were some kind of monitoring equipment. By the time they realized the truth, it was too late to stop it. Chancellor Ji Wuhan sent one final message to the Thoan leadership. They had 72 hours to evacuate their worlds. Every civilian who wanted to live needed to leave. Humanity would not negotiate. Humanity would not change their minds. The countdown had begun. The Thoan leaders refused to believe it. They thought humanity was bluffing. No species would actually destroy an entire solar system. It was unthinkable. Instead of evacuating, they reinforced their defenses. They called in more warships. They prepared for a conventional battle. Dr. Heejin Bak sat in the control center watching the countdown timer. Her finger hovered over the activation button. She had not slept in 3 days. Her mind kept showing her images of what was about to happen. 15 billion Thoan lived on the planets in that system. 15 billion living beings. Admiral Choi stood beside her. He saw her hesitation. He told her gently that she did not have to do this. He could give the order. She could walk away. Dr. Bak shook her head. If this terrible thing had to be done, she would not hide from the responsibility. She had designed the weapon. She would activate it. The timer reached 0. Dr. Bak pressed the button. The satellites around the Thoan star activated simultaneously. They created fields that disrupted the nuclear fusion in the star's core. The star, which had burned steadily for 3 billion years, began to collapse. Within hours, it went supernova. The explosion was visible across half the galaxy. The Thoan homeworld and 3 other planets in the system were vaporized instantly. There was no time for pain, no time for fear. One moment, 15 billion beings existed. The next moment, they did not. The galaxy went silent. Communication networks stopped their chatter. News broadcasts showed nothing but the images of the dying star. Species that had existed for millions of years suddenly understood that everything had changed. The Thoan Dominion, one of the 3 ancient powers, had been functionally destroyed in a single day. Thoan colonies in other systems survived, but their civilization was shattered. Their government was gone. Their military command was gone. Their homeworld was gone. The remaining coalition species faced a choice. Many of the younger races immediately contacted humanity asking for peace. They withdrew from the war completely. They wanted no part of this anymore. Some even offered to join humanity's side. The Velkari Empire and the Rexith Collective tried to hold the coalition together. They called emergency meetings. They demanded that the remaining species stand firm against humanity. But trust was broken. Everyone had the same thought. If humanity could do this to the Thoan, they could do it to anyone. General Minho Yun led teams throughout coalition space. He made contact with species that had been oppressed by the elder races for centuries. He offered them a choice: join humanity's war or stay neutral. Those who joined would be protected. Those who kept fighting would share the Thoan's fate. 17 species joined humanity within the first month. They brought their fleets, their resources, their knowledge. The coalition was crumbling from within. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Choi reviewed reports late into the night. The war was going well from a military perspective. Humanity was winning every major battle, but the casualty numbers kept climbing. Human ships were being destroyed. Human soldiers were dying. The fleet was running low on certain critical supplies. Dr. Bak came to his quarters. She looked exhausted. She had not been the same since activating the array. She told Choi that humanity had become monsters. They had destroyed a star. They had killed 15 billion beings. How were they any different from the elder races now? Choi was quiet for a long moment. Then he said the elder races started this war. They murdered 6 billion humans without warning. They thought humans would surrender. They wanted to teach humanity to accept an inferior position. Now humanity would finish the war by making sure no one ever made that mistake again. Peace through fear, Dr. Bak whispered. That was not peace. That was tyranny. Choi looked at her with tired eyes. Then call us tyrants, he said. But our children will live. Dr. Bak left without another word. She walked through the empty corridors of the ship, past weapons she had designed, past soldiers training for the next battle. She wondered if they would even recognize themselves when this was all over. Overlord Vathek of the Velkari Empire made a desperate decision. The Velkari had a weapon they had not used in 10,000 years, the Genesis Plague, a biological weapon that could rewrite DNA on a planetary scale. It had been banned by every species because it was too horrible even for the elder races. Vathek ordered its use. Velkari agents infiltrated the human colony of Nova Terra. They released the plague in the planet's water supply. Within days, people started getting sick. But they did not die. Instead, they began to change. Their bodies mutated. The plague was rewriting their genetic code. The goal was to create a weapon that would force humanity to surrender. Either they would stop fighting, or watch their species transform into something unrecognizable. Vathek thought it was brilliant. He thought he had finally found a way to win, but the Velkari had forgotten something. Humanity had 200 years of experience with genetic manipulation. Human scientists did not panic when they saw the plague. They studied it. They analyzed it, and then they reverse-engineered it. Dr. Bak led the research team personally. She worked without sleep for weeks. The plague was sophisticated, but human genetic science was more advanced than the Velkari realized. Within 3 weeks, Dr. Bak's team had created a modified version. The human version of the Genesis plague did not transform. It simply killed, and it was airborne. Any Velkari who breathed it would die within hours. There was no cure, no immunity. It was designed to target Velkari biology specifically. Dr. Bak stared at the plague samples in her laboratory. She had just created the most efficient killing tool in history, a weapon that could eliminate an entire species. Her hands shook as she prepared the deployment authorization. General Yoon's forces carried the plague into Velkari territory. Using stealth ships, they deployed it on 17 colony worlds simultaneously. The Velkari, despite their advanced biological sciences, could not stop it. The plague spread faster than they could contain it. Within 2 months, 12 billion Velkari were dead. Entire worlds became silent. Cities stood empty. The Velkari Empire, which had ruled parts of the galaxy for thousands of years, was dying. The galaxy watched in paralyzed horror. Humanity had demonstrated something terrifying. There was no weapon too terrible that it could not be matched. No atrocity so great that it would not be answered in kind. The elder races had thought themselves superior. They were learning the cost of that arrogance. Ariam Lim broadcast another message. Her face appeared on screens across the galaxy. She spoke directly to every species watching. She said the elder races had thought humans were weak. They thought humans were naive. They thought they could commit genocide without consequences. They were wrong. Humanity did not forget, she said. Humanity did not forgive, and humanity would not stop until justice was done. The time for mercy had passed. The elder races had burned that bridge when they destroyed New Haven, Horizon Point, and Arcadia. The message ended. Across the galaxy, species made their calculations. Some chose humanity, others chose neutrality. Very few chose to keep fighting. Because everyone could see where this was going, the elder races were losing, and when they finally fell, the galaxy would belong to whoever was left standing. Right now, humanity was the only one still standing tall. 3 years had passed since New Haven burned. The Galactic Coalition no longer existed. The Thone Dominion was destroyed. The Velkari Empire was dying from the plague. Only the Rexith Collective still fought, and they were losing badly. 57 species had joined humanity's alliance. Some came because they genuinely believed in the human cause. Others came because they were terrified of being next. Either way, humanity now commanded the largest alliance in galactic history. Admiral Kiwan Choi, now called Supreme Commander, oversaw a military machine that spanned hundreds of systems. Human shipyards worked day and night, producing warships at incredible speed. The entire human economy had transformed. Everything was focused on winning the war. Earth itself had changed beyond recognition. The planet that once celebrated art, culture, and learning was now a fortress. Massive orbital defense platforms ringed the world. Military transports filled the skies constantly. Children born during the war knew nothing but preparation for battle. The time had come to end the Velkari Empire forever. Humanity assembled its largest fleet. 2,000 warships gathered for one final assault. Their target was Velkara Prime, the Velkari homeworld, the heart of an empire that had ruled for millennia. The Velkari knew they were doomed, but they would not surrender. They threw everything they had into defending their homeworld. Every remaining warship, every defensive platform, suicide ships packed with antimatter, ancient weapons pulled from museums and armories. If they were going to die, they would make humanity pay for every meter of space. The battle for Velkara Prime lasted 7 days. The Velkari fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction. Their ships crashed into human vessels when their weapons ran out. Their defense platforms fired until they melted from the heat. The planetary shields held far longer than anyone expected. Admiral Choi commanded from the Indomitable. His flagship had been damaged dozens of times in the 3-year war. It bore scars from every major battle, but it still fought. Choi personally led the final assault, his ship's weapons cutting through the Velkari's last defenses. On the 7th day, the planetary shields finally failed. Human forces landed on Velkara Prime. General Minho Yoon commanded the ground invasion. His orders were clear. The Velkari military would surrender completely, or they would be completely destroyed. There was no middle ground. Human soldiers moved through Velkari cities. Some Velkari fought to the last. Others threw down their weapons and begged for mercy. The fighting was brutal and close. Buildings burned. Streets ran with blood from both sides. But slowly, block by block, the human forces advanced. General Yoon's forces reached the Imperial Palace. Overlord Vathek, the leader who had ordered the destruction of New Haven, waited inside with his elite guard. He knew this was the end, but he would not run. He would not hide. If he was going to die, it would be on his throne. The palace defenses fell. Human soldiers poured through the broken gates. General Yun walked through the corridors, past ancient artwork and priceless treasures. He did not care about any of it. He had one goal. Yun found Vathek in the throne room. The Overlord sat on his golden seat, surrounded by the bodies of his guards. He had fought alongside them until the very end. Now he was alone, wounded but still defiant. Vathek looked at Yun and spoke. He said humanity had won, but at what cost? Humans had become the very thing they claimed to oppose. They had brought chaos to the galaxy. They had proven themselves the most dangerous threat the universe had ever known. Yun's voice was cold when he responded. The Velkari had destroyed human worlds because they thought humans were weak. They had murdered billions of children because they believed humans would not fight back. They were wrong. The galaxy would remember what happened when you provoked humanity. Yun told Vathek he wanted him to understand something. This was not justice. This was vengeance. And it was complete. General Yun executed Overlord Vathek personally. The moment was recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. The image of the Velkari leader dying on his throne became a symbol. The age of the elder races was over. The Rexith Collective watched the execution. Their leaders met an emergency session. They were the last of the elder races still standing. The Thone were destroyed. The Velkari were dying. If they kept fighting, they would be next. The Rexith made a choice that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. They sent an emissary to Earth under a flag of truce. For the first time in galactic history, an elder race formally requested surrender terms from a younger species. Chancellor Jiwoo Han received the Rexith delegation in Earth's government center. He looked older now. The weight of billions of deaths had aged him beyond his years, but his mind was still sharp. His will was still iron. The terms were non-negotiable. The Rexith would dismantle their military completely. They would pay reparations to humanity for generations. They would submit to human oversight of their government. Every decision they made would be reviewed by human administrators. Most importantly, they would publicly acknowledge their crimes. Every species in the galaxy would know what the Rexith had done. Every species would know they had participated in attempted genocide. The shame would be permanent. The Rexith accepted every term. They had no choice. The alternative was extinction. With the elder races defeated, humanity established a new galactic order. The old coalition was dissolved. In its place rose the Terran Concordat, a new confederation centered on human leadership. The 57 species that had allied with humanity received full membership and equal rights. The remaining species were placed under provisional status. Their future would depend on their behavior. Dr. Hyejin Bak was appointed Director of Galactic Sciences. Her job was to ensure that the terrible weapons humanity had developed would be carefully controlled. She accepted the position even though it felt like punishment. She would spend the rest of her life trying to make sure no one else could use the weapons she had created. Admiral Choi refused any political position. He remained Supreme Commander of the Human Defense Force. When asked why he did not retire, his answer was simple. Someone needed to remember what humanity was capable of. Someone needed to make sure the galaxy never forgot. That was his job now. On Earth, a memorial was built to honor the dead. It was a massive wall of black stone 50 kilometers long. Every name of every human who died in the war was carved into the stone. At the center stood a statue of a simple human figure with head bowed and empty hands. Ariam Lim spoke at the memorial's dedication ceremony. She was older now, her face lined with the weight of everything she had witnessed. Her voice carried across the silent crowd and to billions watching across the galaxy. She said humanity had not wanted this war. Humans had not sought vengeance. But when the elder races came for their children, humans showed the galaxy what they truly were. They were not monsters, but they were not weak, and they would never again allow their people to be slaughtered without consequence. She told everyone to remember the fallen, remember the price of peace, and remember that this must never happen again. The ceremony ended. People filed past the memorial wall, touching the names, crying for loved ones who would never come home. The galaxy had changed forever. The age of the elder races was over. The age of humanity had begun, but victory tasted like ash. Humanity had survived. They had won. They had proven they could not be destroyed. But in doing so, they had become something they never wanted to be. They had become the strongest force in the galaxy. They had become the thing everyone else feared, and deep down every human knew the truth. They had won the war, but they had lost something precious, something that could never be recovered. Their innocence was gone. Their dream of being peaceful explorers was dead. They were warriors now, conquerors, the new elder race. The question was whether they could be better than the ones they had replaced, or whether they would repeat the same mistakes. Only time would tell. 10 years had passed since the war ended. Earth looked peaceful again. Cities had been rebuilt. Parks were filled with families. Children played in the streets. But anyone who looked closely could see the changes. Every building had reinforced shelters. Every park had hidden weapon emplacements. Every civilian had basic military training. The Terran Concordat maintained order across the galaxy. Human colonies had expanded into former Velkari and Thoan territories. The economy was strong. Trade routes were secure. On the surface, everything looked good. But beneath that surface, questions remained. Dr. Haye Jinbak sat in her office surrounded by awards and honors. She had been called a hero, a genius, a savior of humanity. But at night, she still dreamed of the Thoan star collapsing. She still saw the 15 billion lives ending because she pressed a button. Chancellor Ji Wuhan visited her one afternoon. They had been friends before the war. Now they were something else. Survivors carrying guilt too heavy to share with anyone else. Dr. Bak asked the question that had haunted her for 10 years. Could they have found another way? Could they have won without becoming monsters? Han was quiet for a long time. He finally admitted he asked himself the same question every day. But he reminded her that the elder races struck first. They murdered 6 billion humans without warning. What choice did humanity have? Dr. Bak said they had a choice. They could have surrendered. They could have accepted subjugation instead of committing genocide. They chose vengeance over survival. They chose to become the very thing they fought against. Han said their species survived. Their children had a future. Was that not worth the price? Dr. Bak admitted she did not know anymore. She did not know if anything was worth what they did. Admiral Kiwan Choi remained at his post aboard the Indomitable. He was in his 70s now, but he refused to retire. The ship had become a symbol of human military might. Choi had become a symbol too, the warrior who never rested, the guardian who never forgot. General Min Ho Yun visited him regularly. The two veterans understood each other in ways no one else could. They had seen too much, done too much to ever return to normal life. They were weapons that could never be put away. Yun asked if history would remember them as heroes or monsters. Choi said both. They had saved their species, and they had damned their souls. History would judge them by which mattered more. Ariam Lim had spent 10 years traveling the galaxy. She documented stories from survivors on all sides. Human soldiers who could not sleep because of what they did. Rexith civilians who lost families in human attacks. Felkari children who survived the plague. She recorded everything. Many humans thought she was dishonoring the sacrifices of the war. But Ariam believed if humanity only remembered their own pain, they would repeat the cycle. They needed to remember all the pain they caused too. Only then could they truly heal. Then the sensors detected something. Deep space monitoring stations picked up readings from outside the galaxy. A fleet was approaching. Not a small fleet. The largest fleet anyone had ever seen. Thousands upon thousands of ships. The unknown fleet did not respond to communication attempts. They did not slow down. Their trajectory pointed directly toward human space. The galaxy had a new threat. Admiral Choi analyzed the data with a sinking feeling. This fleet was massive and clearly advanced. After 10 years of peace through fear, humanity faced an enemy they knew nothing about. And this time they would not have surprise on their side. An emergency council was called. All the leaders of the Terran Concordat gathered. The question was simple but terrible. What should they do? Admiral Choi argued for immediate military mobilization. Strike first, strike hard, before the enemy could establish themselves. It was the same strategy that had won the war against the elder races. General Yun disagreed. He said they did not know who these beings were or what they wanted. If humanity attacked first, they would become exactly what Overlord Vathek had accused them of being. The galaxy's greatest threat. Dr. Bak spoke passionately. She said humanity had the chance to be different. They could try to communicate first. Try to understand. If they failed, they could still fight. But if they fought first, they would never know if peace was possible. Chancellor Han listened to all the arguments. The weight of decision rested on his shoulders again. He thought about New Haven. He thought about the Thoan star collapsing. He thought about all the death and destruction humanity had caused in the name of survival. Han made his choice. They would try to communicate. They would send a delegation armed but peaceful. They would attempt contact. If the unknown fleet attacked, humanity would defend itself with everything they had. But they would not strike first. Han said humanity had learned to be monsters when necessary. Now they needed to learn to be something else. If they survived only by being the galaxy's terror, had they truly survived at all? Their vengeance had ignited. It had burned away everything they were. Now they needed to find out if anything remained of who they wanted to be. Admiral Choi objected strongly. This decision could cost humanity everything. But Han was firm. Perhaps, he acknowledged, but there had to be more to humanity than just the ability to destroy. A ship was prepared. Not a warship, though it could defend itself. A diplomatic vessel. Ariam Lim volunteered to be part of the delegation. So did Dr. Bak. A team of diplomats and scientists was carefully selected. Admiral Choi insisted on going personally. His presence would be both protection and warning. As the ship prepared to launch, the entire galaxy watched. The species of the Terran Concordat, who had lived under human dominance for 10 years, saw this as a test. Would humanity prove they were more than their worst actions? Or would they confirm they were the monsters their enemies had claimed? The delegation launched. They flew toward the approaching fleet, broadcasting messages of peace in every language known to the galaxy. They sent mathematical sequences. They sent images of Earth and other worlds. They tried everything they could think of to communicate. They did not know if the unknown beings would listen. They did not know if they were flying to their deaths. But they went anyway. They carried the hope that humanity could be more than what the war had made them. On Earth, at the memorial wall, workers added a new inscription. It read that humanity had been provoked and wronged. They had fought with all their fury, and they had won. But victory came at a price still being paid. Future generations needed to remember not just their strength, but the cost of unleashing it. They needed to be wiser. They needed to find ways to protect themselves without becoming what they fought against. The unknown fleet grew closer. The diplomatic ship flew to meet them. Humanity waited to see if their choice would lead to peace or to another war. They waited to see if the cycle of violence could finally be broken. The answer remained uncertain. But for the first time since New Haven burned, humanity chose to extend a hand instead of a fist. Whether that hand would be accepted or severed, only time would tell. The delegation continued forward. Behind them, the human fleet prepared for war just in case. Ahead of them, the unknown ships came closer. The moment of contact approached. Dr. Bak sat in the delegation ship, watching the approaching fleet through the viewport. She thought about everything that had happened. The weapons she created, the lives that ended, the price that was paid. She wondered if humanity would get the chance to be better. She hoped they would. She hoped this was the beginning of something new, not just another cycle of death. Admiral Choi stood nearby, his hand near the weapons controls. He was ready to fight if needed. But he too hoped for peace. He had seen enough war for 10 lifetimes. Ariam recorded everything. Whatever happened next would be remembered. She would make sure of that. The unknown fleet was very close now. Soon humanity would have its answer. Soon they would know if their choice to try peace instead of war was wisdom or foolishness. Soon the galaxy would see what humanity had become in the years since their vengeance ignited. And in that moment of uncertainty, hanging between war and peace, humanity held its breath and hoped.